Good afternoon.
Good
It's
afternoon.
another episode of the Perspicacity Podcast. Your host, Enrique Margulis, interviewing with Ben Warren. And it is Monday, February 19th. A lot of things to cover from perspectives, wide perspectives, different perspectives.
Yeah. And this is not phony, Enrique. We're not just, we really feel the way this is completely real. This is completely genuine.
Yes, of course. What are you trying to say?
Well, you see a lot of manufactured outrage and polarization in the media, and a lot of times I really think these people are just acting,
Your outrage is real.
Well, from the text messages you send, yours is too.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I got outrage. I have concern. I think that if we really look at it, you have outrage and I've got concern.
I wouldn't label it like that. But okay, whatever.
I mean,
I'm outraged that you said that.
Yeah, you are. All right. Well, I got a wire over here for some reason that doesn't need to be here. Okay.
All right.
Can you hear that noise? The machines
outside?
outside?
What's going on out there?
They're doing a construction job. It's unbelievable. I was going to do this whole podcast inside of the closet at one point, and then I thought, no, I can't sit in the closet. But all right, we'll just do the best we can under the circumstances.
Yeah.
Let's look. I sent you a couple videos because the text messages that I send are sort of like a guide for what we're going to be talking about. The ideas, and I sent you. Did you enjoy the video of the guy getting stoned to death?
I am oftentimes vexed and perplexed at what you send, and the latest one appears to be an obese African American woman, looks like dressed in, pajamas or something, getting smacked off of her feet by a car that's doing donuts. And this is what you are sending me. I have no idea what it means, what you're trying to say, what the implications are. I'm baffled. So maybe you can explain right now.
There are thousands of street takeovers happening every day, particularly like in Oakland, California, San Francisco, California, Chicago, New York, where they're like wilding with their cars.
Wild.
And
I haven't heard that word in a while.
And then the people crowd around and cheer and say, yeah, fuck shit up, man, get them. And then they're doing it, and then in 50% of these street takeovers with the cars and the donuts and the wild shit, a handful of people usually get killed at these things. And it's a low percentage. Like there's sometimes like 300 people there, and only 3 or 4 people are getting killed. But it's still it's interesting. And then I thought that's just another one. It's one of thousands of videos that I see every week.
Okay, can I say something? First of all, here goes the outrage, right? I'm outraged that you would use, not outraged, but it's curious that you chose the word wilding to express this form of whatever it is, nastiness.
What do you could use your own word. What word do you want to use?
But why did you choose the word wilding, which is, of course, a connotation is, you remember the Central Park, but I guess it was a jogger, was it?
Yeah, I don't really need to go all the way back there. It's just a word that's used pretty regularly. It may not be used in Brooklyn.
I guess it was 5 black youths were falsely charged with the crime, and they use the word wilding in all the newspapers in New York.
We were using the word wilding years and years and years before that, and we've been using it years and years after that.
Well, that's
the
the
word
first time it
wasn't
came to my attention. I'm sure a lot of people it first was brought to prominence in that case, right?
a lot of people. You really concern yourself with the a lot of people thing. What is it?
Oh.
What do you mean a lot of people? If that's
I'm
what you
saying
thought
it was brought to prominence by that case. The word wilding was used to describe what black youths do to create havoc and menace to the city. So now you're using it to describe what black people do to create havoc and menace.
I don't think it has anything to do. I wasn't pointing out a particular race. I was just using a word that I've been using and that people around me have been using for 30 years, 40 years. You know, I wasn't associating that word with the Central Park jogger, which I was also the only person in my purview that was actually saying that those kids did not commit the crime. I was the only person that I knew that said these people are innocent.
Okay.
And then eventually a few other people came on board. But in that particular situation, like with many others, I'm by myself in my observations. I'm a minority. Mm-hmm. And I have an observation that everybody else disagrees with. And then eventually over time, my particular point of view becomes more the majority, but it could take years.
Well, then if you really were on this, on the right side of that issue back in the day, then why would you use that word now? It's got such baggage, doesn't it?
I really haven't thought about any baggage with it. I
was wilding.
Yeah, I did not consider that word as having baggage. But in any case,
all right, let's move on.
Yeah, this is what's going on all the time. Mm-hmm. And you can make your own observations as to who is participating in these things. And you can look at them and then you can say, oh, it's this race or it's this race. I'm not promoting the idea that it's one particular race over another. You can see from the videos, I see thousands of them. And it doesn't really matter to me what race is doing it. It's a anti-American, fascist, I'm going to use labels. I think it's a Marxist, anarchist, radicalized people who are being offensive to law and order, and they are, behaving in a manner that is dangerous to the society, and people get hurt. Yeah.
And instead of focusing on that, right? You sent me something about Fannie Willis. I don't know how to pronounce her name.
But wait. So we can go past that, but it's not a question. It's not something that's not worth focusing on for a minute. It's a thing that's happening. So we can go on to another topic. It's not a problem.
The reason I bring up this as opposed to what you're talking about is to draw. It's a bit of a false equivalency. What's really going on in the country? You've got a president that tried to falsify to steal the election, right? He tried to upend our democracy.
You think Joe Biden tried to stole the election?
No. That I'm talking about former President Trump. That was good. That was very funny. But I'm talking about Trump.
Yeah.
And instead of focusing on like what you call anti-American Marxists running wild, why don't you focus on actual people in power trying to steal elections and subvert our democracy, our American way, instead of focusing on African Americans wilding out?
But like, we can focus on more. Yeah, we can focus on more than one thing, can't we?
No, but why don't you?
I focus on 50, 60, 70 things. I don't just focus on one thing.
I've never heard you once talk to me about how Trump tried to steal the election.
I'm not aware that he did.
Oh, you're not aware?
Is that what you think Trump tried to steal the election? Is that what you think?
Well, they have his voice on tape saying, "I want you to find 11,780 votes," which is the number he needed to win the.
Okay, how's that stealing the election?
How is that stealing the election?
Yeah, how is that attempting to steal an election?
It's attempt to steal the election.
How is that an attempt?
When you use your power and authority to, whatever it is, sway, convince, cajole, influence somebody to find, in other words, fraudulently come up with.
There's no other words. No. He didn't say fraudulently find 11,000 votes. He never said that. He said
honestly,
find
12,000 votes, please. Can you dig up 12,000 votes, please? The real, truthful way, please.
I think it's very possible that the Democrats seem to find a lot of votes all of a sudden in the 11th hour.
Wait. Let's stick to this because we have his voice on tape, right?
Yeah.
We have his voice on tape. We don't have the Democrats on tape, do we?
We have his voice on tape saying to find 11,000 votes, but he didn't say illegally. He didn't say.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure he. Yeah.
I mean, I think you're making a hell of an assumption. The oddity of the election is that he was winning pretty much every state, and then all of a sudden, after the election was pretty much over and he won it, somebody ran in and said, wait, we got hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballots that we got to include. Which I personally think there should not be a mail-in ballot allowed. That should be completely against the law. It leaves too much room for funny business. I think that the elections have been unreliable for 100 years to some degree. But, there's always a little shenanigans here and some shenanigans there is my understanding of how these things work. But I think what we need to do in this country is get ourselves on the track of correct. There is a tremendous amount of corruption on all sides, in every party.
And you would admit that this is corruption, right? What Trump did, right?
No, I wouldn't say it is. I wouldn't say it is corruption or not corruption. I don't see any indication of that being corrupt, saying find 11,000 votes.
You don't think that's someone trying to perpetrate a fraud right there?
No, I don't see that at all.
How do you explain? Just curious. Is that just he's really honestly wanting to really find the exact amount needed to win the election in a good way?
I have no idea. Yeah. I really don't know enough about that to really have an intelligent conversation. But what I can say is, we've got to stop these mail-in ballots.
That's the big problem, right?
There's two big problems. One is mail-in ballots, and the other is I think there's 14 states that don't require you to have an ID to go and vote. You need an ID to go into a bar.
You don't need an ID.
Huh?
You don't need an ID to vote. You shouldn't need an ID to vote.
No, you have to have an ID. If you don't need an ID to vote, you shouldn't have to have an ID to drink. You shouldn't have an ID to open a bank account. And then we can really have a complete disaster, and the country can just devolve into a hellscape. The idea that you don't need an ID to vote is so obscene and so absurd that it's almost mind-boggling to me that it's even part of the conversation. Why would you find it advantageous that a human being in America, where every single country on planet Earth requires an ID to vote, even African countries, you have to have an ID to vote. Nordic countries, you need an ID to vote in Denmark. You need an ID to vote in Sweden. You need an ID to vote in England, you need an ID to vote. So what argument can you actually put forward that could justify the idea of not needing an ID to vote? And second part of that question is, if you don't need an ID to vote, what prevents you from voting in one place and then going somewhere else and voting?
Okay.
Again,
I'm really glad you asked this, because this is one of the biggest, it drives me crazy. Let's be clear. Let's be honest. What you and what your argument wants is to deprive many voters, typically low income, black, ethnic, elderly, people with disabilities, any of these people, you want to deny them and deprive them their right to vote. That is why you are focusing. No. Hold on. Let me
I want those people to go and use an ID to vote. The poor.
But you understand, a lot of these people, as a matter of fact, more frequently are these people, the African American, the elderly, disability, they can't afford or can't get the documents that are necessary to vote. They should not be deprived of their right to vote, right?
Why can't they get the documents to vote?
Because for a lot of people, they don't have the time, the energy, the money.
If they're that busy that they don't have time to go and get a state ID that costs $14 in most states, and they don't have the time to get a state ID to go and vote, then they shouldn't be voting. If they're that busy, they're probably too busy to vote.
First of all,
Nobody's that
Americans, millions of people don't have a government-issued photo ID, first of all.
But they should get one.
Secondly, it costs money to get.
No, it's like $14.
No. You have to get and pay for birth certificates.
No,
you need underlying documents. It's not just getting an ID.
So
if you don't, underlying documents that they don't have the time and wherewithal. Look, this society and this country, we are already so burdened with so much that we have to do to get by on a day-to-day basis just to make our way in this world. And what you want to do and what you want to achieve is to make it hard, is to create a barrier for them to have a seamless, fluid voting experience. We know that voting, that there's almost no such thing as voter fraud. There's almost nothing, 0%. So you are trying to create this false problem, right? A straw man, a boogeyman, and then create problems for an average citizen to have to leap over this hurdle just so you can deprive a real American from voting in this election. Because why? Why do you want blacks and the poor not to vote? Why?
I would never not want blacks and poor to not be able to vote. That statement is so obnoxious and obscene.
It is them that are being targeted.
No,
it is them.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
Well,
if you don't have the time,
the people that don't have ID are disproportionately low income and black.
We agreed that we weren't going to interrupt each other, right? I let you speak, and I'm going to say, the idea that a person is too stupid, too incapable, anybody is too ill-equipped, ill-prepared to be able to go and get a state ID and pay the $14. In some states, it's like $8. is such, it's an idea so embroiled in racism, left-wing racism, that it's heartbreaking to actually hear somebody articulate such things. If you need an ID to drive a car, you should have to have an ID to vote. The most important thing that exists that a person must be identified.
Why? Because there's a lot of fraud? I'm asking you a question.
Well, there is a fair amount of fraud. I don't know the exact amount, but people who say that there's zero fraud are really trying to make an argument it's an obscene argument.
Why?
Because of course there's fraud in voting. Of course there is.
If there's no problem, then why create this barrier to entry? If there is no voter fraud. Yeah, go on.
But I think the problem here is that I just said there is voter fraud, and then you said if there is no voter fraud, then why find a solution to a problem that doesn't exist? There's no question that there's voter fraud, and it's been going on for 100 years. There is question.
They've examined this.
Who's they?
The people who look at such things.
The people that I've seen that look at it said there's absolutely voter fraud. There's no question about there being voter fraud. And I'm not saying it's extremely rampant, but in order to make sure that the amount of voter, it won't cure, what I'm suggesting won't stop voter fraud completely, but it will diminish it to the degree where it likely becomes inconsequential. If you're so busy that you don't have time to go and get a state ID because you don't drive a car, that means you're probably incredibly wealthy. And
what?
Yeah, only very wealthy people are so busy that they don't have time to go get a state ID. That last 10 years, it's basically taking 45 minutes every 10 years to renew the state ID. 45 minutes, that comes out to a few seconds a year. Are you telling me that these people never go to a bar and drink a beer, they never take a walk in the park, they never have any leisure time whatsoever, that they can't go and allocate the time to go get a state ID? That's an absurdity. And, and I think that the argument is, it's rife with the intent of defrauding. People who say, no, let's not require people to have an ID to vote. Let's allow mail-in ballots to proliferate. These are the people that are kind of looking for some kind of an edge, an unfair advantage, because they have a political preference. Why do that? Why do you think it's? I mean, we have to kind of split up because it seems to be that the left wing doesn't want IDs, and they want to encourage mail-in ballots, and the right wing says, hey, people should have an ID, and there's a real concern for the mail-in ballots. You don't know who's filling out those ballots. Okay. Why do you think?
Let me know when I can answer.
Yeah.
All right. There have been investigations by, let's say, Centers for Justice, right? Non-partisan, non-political. They've investigated the incidences of voter fraud. And their words, not mine, it is infinitesimally rare. It is beyond rare. In other words, it is not a problem. So what let's say the right is doing is creating a false problem, right? And therefore coming up with a solution which will deprive millions of people that just so happen to be Black, Spanish, disabled, poor, living out in rural areas. Just so happens it will deprive those very people of the right to vote.
So you're saying that it's only that demographic. So you think it's that demographic that is incapable of getting an ID? Do you realize how?
It's been proven. It's been proven.
No, it has not been proven. Not
Sure.
at all.
Of course.
No.
Well, first of all, who do you think can't put it together? They can't get the time and effort to get the various documents needed to get the right state ID and spend the day at whatever, the DMV in line waiting for these, bureaucrats to finally stamp a picture. Look, I just went for my driver's license. You would not believe the bureaucracy involved. I still haven't gotten it.
Really?
Yeah, it's been over a year.
That's pretty odd because I went to get my driver's license and I walked in. I was in and out in 15 minutes. So that is peculiar. That is peculiar, and I've never had a problem. Do you think that the reason that I have never had a problem getting my driver's license is because of the color of my skin? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, I know that the simplest things can become difficult for people that don't have the means, that don't have the money to get shit done as easily as you and I do.
But you just said you are having it's taken you a year.
Yeah.
Do you know how? Right.
It's a matter of there's a lot of there's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of showing up at these offices that, believe me, most Americans, people, especially on the low income spectrum, they don't have that kind of time and they don't want to be bothered with that shit, especially when it comes to something that they should inherently have a right to, especially when there is no problem to begin with. There is no reason not to let them vote. Nobody
should have the privilege to vote if they don't even have the time or want to put in the energy and effort to get an ID that shows that you're an American and that demonstrates that you are a legitimate individual that should have the right to vote, because it is obscene that somebody will have time to vote but not time to go and get an ID. Anyway, I don't want to belabor this thing, forever. But you made your point. I think I made my point fairly well. And I think it's racist to suggest that black people don't have the capability, the intelligence, the capacity to go and get a state ID.
That's not at all what I'm talking about.
I think it is. That's what you just said. So it's terrible. All right. Anyway, did you see the video that I sent you with the stoning?
No, I didn't.
You didn't? I
did not.
Why not? Let's put it on. I think it's a really good one.
Put it on.
Here. Let's see. How do you share a screen? Jesus. Here it goes. Screen. Share. How do I share my screen? This is terrible. Select a tab to share. No, window. Okay. Entire screen. Oh, man.
Jeez, wow.
I can't understand how this shit works.
Acid flashball.
All right. Window. Let's try that. Nope, that's no good either. How do you share a screen? Isn't that strange? Entire screen? Oh, maybe I have to shrink this down. God damn it.
God damn it.
I got to practice this. Oh, now it's not even letting me. I'm not going to be able to show it.
If this is how difficult it is to share a screen, imagine how difficult it is to get a state ID.
It's a lot easier to get a state ID than it is to share a screen. All right, let's. I really wanted to show that.
Oh, well, okay. It's a video of a woman being stoned in Palestine, right? Not stoned like stoned.
It's a video of what goes on.
I got a wild dingo here. Sorry.
No.
Yeah, wild dingo stole my baby.
That's crazy.
A dingo stole my baby.
Yeah, evidently. All right, you know what? I'm going to try one more time.
Do it.
Here it goes. Window. All right, maybe it'll work this time. All right. Oh, here we go. Okay,
Oh, here we
share. All right. Can you see it?
Nope.
Now?
Nope.
You can't see my screen?
Nope. Can't see shit. I hear a woman screaming.
This is hard to watch.
This is awful, dude. Why are you making us watch a woman being stoned?
No, because you got to see this. This is what the whole Free Palestine movement's all about. Bringing that to America.
Oh, come on.
That's really what it's about. Do you know the harsh reality of living in that environment for people? The lack of rights that women have, the lack of rights that anybody has. And, you know, when you are paid basically to be a martyr and they take care of your family, when you go out and you kill Israelis, the more Israelis you kill, the more money your family gets. This is a hell of a situation. But anyway, there's been some good developments that have happened that are very positive there in the Middle East. It looks like Egypt, who has been frightened out of their wits' end about Hamas, they have now began to communicate, recognize Israel as a state because they're not afraid of Hamas right now. So it does look like Hamas has been beaten. And, you know, this now the operations in Rafah, I think, are very successful, and things are going reasonably well. As far as Netanyahu is concerned, I'm definitely somewhat disappointed with him. You know,
right.
Still hasn't gotten the hostages back. And, you know, just went into this with, you know, kind of half-cocked. And I think that Israel needs a much stronger leader. And
more stronger?
Yeah, we need a stronger leader.
What you want is a strong man, right?
A stronger leader. Someone who is, number one, not going to have allowed this to have happened in the first place. And number two, after it happened, we should have gotten those hostages back by now. It's been like, what, 150 days? I don't know how many days it's been. But,
so you want Israel to go even further to the right?
No, not to the right.
Not to the right?
To the correct.
To the correct.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not, and I don't know why you would call it further to the right. What does that even mean?
Well, right now we have, you said you want a stronger leader. Now, usually stronger is like, it's like a dog whistle for authoritarian, strong man.
No, I don't think they should go with, No, that's not what it is. No, it's the opposite of that. I think that we want to get away from the authoritarian left-wing Marxist dictatorship types. What I want to do is just get a strong democratic leader who is fair and just and understands hostages have been taken and we've got to get these people back immediately. The toll that these hostages are going through, I think, is probably even hard to imagine. If you see the way they treat their own people, you can only imagine the way that they're treating the hostages. We don't even know.
How many hostages are there?
I think there are about 150 still there.
And how many Palestinians have been killed?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody really knows. My understanding is that I think it's about 35,000, which is a fairly low number considering, ratio of all the wars. It's about 20,000 Hamas militants and about 15,000 civilians, and that ratio is pretty extraordinary. Normally, the ratio is 90% civilian casualties in a war. And this is way, way less than that. Are you
horrified at that number?
Which number?
The amount of Palestinians killed.
Well, I mean, I expected about 300,000.
No, but what about what's actually happened? Are you...
Well, it's a lot.
I think that. Are you horrified about that?
I think that number is so low, and I think
right?
And I think that it's because the government in Israel is just putting so much effort to try to spare civilian lives, but then Hamas, the Palestinian leadership there, is really doing everything they can to put their civilians into harm's way.
Do you understand how someone who might be more of like a humanitarian, listening to your words, about 20,000 people killed, or maybe even more at this point, 30, 40,000, when you say it's so low, do you understand how, like, somebody who has actual human feelings for human beings might be disgusted by what you're saying?
I think that those people that you're describing are interested in 10 million Israeli deaths. So they're saying they are angry about 35,000 Palestinian deaths. 20,000 of them are extremely dangerous Hamas militants. Those are the people that would be rejoicing if 10 million Jewish people were killed in Israel.
So you see, this is what I this whole polarization, this my team, your team, Israelis, Palestinians, it's ultimately not the way to go. The only way out of this is to see people as people, human beings as human beings. There's no teams. Sure. There's no Israelis and Palestinians. We're all here to share this earth, this life for a brief time, and we've got to work our way through this nightmare. Yeah. And this is not the way to do it. I'm sure you realize that, right?
Well, what is the way to do it?
Again, the only way that I know of how to get beyond violence is through communication.
I agree. And you know what? When people refuse to communicate. So Israel has been doing its very best to communicate. And every single day, even today, I looked before I had the call, I think it's 57 rockets were launched towards Tel Aviv. That doesn't mean they make it all the way to Tel Aviv. But even just today, Hamas is still firing rockets. It's diminished, but every day they still fire. They're still attacking. So we had a ceasefire a couple months ago. It was a pause, and Hamas started firing within 15 minutes of the ceasefire. So I agree with you that communication is the best way to solve conflicts. But when the person that you're trying to communicate, or the group of people that you're trying to communicate with, tell you, listen, our communication is this: we want you dead, and That's the only thing that's going to satisfy us. So if you want to communicate with us to make us happy, let us kill you, and then we'll be happy. That's pretty much how the dialogue goes. After October 7th, the Hamas leaders and various different people, they got on the news and they got on the TV and they said, October 7th was a victory, and we will do a repeat of October 7th over and over and over as often as possible. Nothing will stop us. So long as we live and breathe, we will continue. So that tells us that they have to not be living and breathing in order for this to stop. They gave us the formula. They gave us the information. And it's extremely unfortunate. The millions of Arabs that live in Israel, they understand what's going on. They understand that there's no choice. They're also frightened. The Arab nations are frightened of these terror groups. They're frightened. That's why Egypt built a wall that was like 6 walls deep to make sure that there was no way that any of these people in Gaza could possibly get into their territory because they're afraid. Jordan does not want any of these people on their land, even though Jordan is 90%. They call themselves Palestinians.
Do you believe there should be a state for Palestine?
They're already, well, I mean, that's a new concept. The state for Palestine, I mean, we already have Jordan, Egypt, Morocco, Syria, Libya, to name a few. Those are all countries that together are about 150 times larger than little tiny Israel, which is like the size of New Jersey.
But wait,
these people.
I thought there was an agreement that there was a plan to implement a two-state solution. Why do you say this is a new idea? And that it was actually agreed to by the Israeli government and the Palestinians, and you know, what was the?
No, the Palestinians wouldn't. No, the Palestinians wouldn't agree to it.
I thought in 93, the Israeli government and Palestine Liberation Organization agreed on a plan to implement a two-state solution.
They agreed on it, but they wouldn't put it through. So, you know, we had, in 1978, we had the Camp David Accords, and that was supposed to establish a long-lasting peace between Egypt and Israel, first of all, and also had a significant impact on the trajectory of the Israeli-Palestinian peace negotiations. That was what that was. The accords basically brokered by, that was Jimmy Carter was the president at the time, and he came right after a ceasefire that was in the 1973 Yom Kippur War. And that was when Egypt and Syria both together fought Israel, with the hopes of regaining the territory that was lost in a previous conflict. The main tenets of that deal were that Egypt and Israel agreed to refrain from the use of force to resolve their disputes, and agreed that Israel would have a path towards, giving back the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt. Then, 10 years later, there was that first Intifada. This is after the Camp David Accords, and then Arafat basically, during that Intifada, Arafat acknowledged Israel's right to exist. And then, so back, just, looking at the... explain to the people what an Intifada is. An Intifada is an attack. An attack.
In this case, in 87, it was Palestinians living under Israeli rule.
Well, of course.
Began an uprising, right?
you have to understand that after Israel had to invade Lebanon in order to pull out the Palestinian Liberation Army members there, who is a terror group, and then they created, and then there was a construction of the new Israeli settlements that increased, the conflicts between the Israeli security forces and the West Bank and Gaza, and then they had a fight. But then soon after that, there was the Madrid Conference in 1991. Then the first Oslo Agreement, that was in 1993, where they tried their best to create a peace. Probably the next very relevant event was the Bill Clinton attempt in the year 2000, which was the Camp David Accords then. And so right after Rabin's assassination, Netanyahu was elected. The Accords then became destabilized. Clinton tried to salvage the negotiations by inviting Arafat and Netanyahu to the United States in order to have a meeting there. At that particular meeting, they agreed to that Israel would withdraw from the West Bank, and then the Palestinians would then take certain precautions to prevent violence against Israel, or make certain agreements that they would stop the violence against Israel. And both of those groups, both the Israelis and the Palestinians, basically were accusing one another of breaking the agreement. But if you look at the record, every single event that happened, aggression was from the Palestinians against the Israelis, and then the Israelis responded. Most of the time, hold on.
That's not true.
Then, well, it is true. And then we have, in 2005, this was a very big event. Israel basically completely agreed in a unilateral withdrawal agreement that they would leave completely Gaza and also many of the settlements in the West Bank. Okay, now when I say Israelis, the Israelis that we're talking about that were living in the West Bank are just Jewish people. They're not people, and this is where we really have to understand, they're not people that are causing problems over there. The problem is that they're Jews. And these people don't like Jews. So therefore, they want to expel them, just like they did in Morocco and Egypt and all these other countries that I keep mentioning. It's the Jewish people that were living in the West Bank were not causing problems. I think that we really want to register that. The problem was in and of itself that they were Jews.
But isn't this territory that the Palestinians believed is theirs?
They can believe it, but there's no reality to that. Palestinians never had any control over any part of Israel at any time in history. Go back 10,000 years.
The whole thing goes back to the Jews given this land, right?
Yeah, they were given the land that they had a right to. There's a history that goes back thousands and thousands of years. It was even in the Quran, when the Quran refers to Jewish people, the Quran refers to them as the children of Israel. Even in the Quran, there's no mention of the Palestinians in the Torah, in the Bible, in anywhere. So the fact of the matter is, that this group of people that is in that is in Israel has no historical claim to the land. There were just a lot of Palestinians there while the Ottomans ruled it, and there were a lot of Palestinians there while the British ruled it. But they never had any autonomy or control over that land. So what happened was, Article 181, the United Nations resolution, said, okay, this is the land of Israel. So what we're going to do is we're going to ratify that and let them have their government and govern themselves. Yes, it was on the heels of the Holocaust, where Jewish people couldn't go anywhere. Even in the United States, anti-Semitism was extraordinary. But throughout Europe, it was a very difficult time. So a lot of the Jewish people that you find in South America, that you find all over the world, are there because their ancestors, their grandparents, fled the persecution. And that's why they're scattered all over the place. But right now, about 95% of Jews live either in Israel or Miami Beach and New York and Los Angeles.
So when I'm asking this because my history is terrible. When Israel was given this land, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Were there people living on the land that were displaced?
Not right away. So what happened is Israel was given the land, and then the Jewish people went and they started building, and they were happy to get along with everybody. But
let's leave your own personal anecdotes out. Let's just
by historical accounts, there was never a problem with the Jewish people living side by side with everybody, because they're still doing it to this day. What happened was...
Were there people there on the land already?
Of course there were people there, and they were not displaced at all. No, they weren't.
Why not?
Because there was no need to displace them. There was plenty of room. Nobody needed to displace anybody. But what happened was that the Nazis, right after World War II, they went to Israel and they had meetings. I think it was the Grand Mufti, and they had meetings with the Grand Mufti, and they gave him gold and all kinds of riches. And the idea was to say, do not live side by side with the Jews. We want you to make sure that the Jews aren't allowed to be here.
Well, was it Palestinian territory?
No, not at all.
Before it was given to the Jews?
No, it wasn't. It was all kinds of people that were living there. It was definitely not Palestinians. There were all kinds of Arabs. Arabs are made up of many, many different types.
A lot of UN officials and various peoples have said that this is basically amounts to a permanent occupation. Israel is permanently occupying this territory. And what they call.
I understand what
you understand that.
Yeah. I understand that some people say that, and it's. I strongly disagree, because it's completely absurd. So today, the only people that were...
And then you... Wait, hold on. Can I just say one last thing?
Yeah.
You keep on talking about Israeli settlers. They're increasingly expanding into Palestinian territory.
So let me ask you this. In
and
your
saying,
neighborhood...
you're nice people. They don't want to hurt anybody. They're just Jews.
Right. Yeah. So let me ask you this. You live in Kingston. What would you do, right? How would you feel if black people started moving into your neighborhood? Would you all of a sudden say this is an occupation?
What are you talking about?
Do you see how racist this is? If black people started to go and move into Kingston, New York, would you all of a sudden consider that an occupation?
What are you talking about? That's completely apples and oranges.
It's exactly the same thing. The Jewish people were moving into places, and they said, we don't want to live with the Jews. And the reason they didn't want to live with the Jews is because the Grand Mufti basically said, we don't want to live with the Jews. And he was the hierarchy. He was the one who everybody looked up to in that part of the ideological spectrum, and said, whatever the Grand Mufti says, that's what we're going to do. But if black people started to move into my neighborhood, I would welcome them. But the thing is, in this situation, they were not welcomed. All they're doing is moving in, building homes, okay, and trying to live their lives. And they said, we don't want these people here. And so what happened was, there were some Arabs that said, you know what?
Well,
when you're displacing,
nobody was displacing.
No. Just a minute. No, there was plenty of room, plenty of land. There was no displacing. So what we have is some of the Arabs said, you know what? I don't mind the Jews. I don't have a problem with the Jews. And then some said, we want them dead. So the ones that wanted the Jews dead, they were needed to be pushed into an area that they could be controlled. But to this day, 25%, millions and millions of Arabs live in Israel. Some of them are Palestinians, some of them are from all over the world, all over the Middle East, and they live there very happily. Very, very happily, and they don't have a problem with Jews. So that's why everybody gets along. The only people that there's a problem with are the people that hate them. So
well, there's another problem, though, Enrique, that you're kind of overlooking, which is that the Israeli government has a legal and political system that favors the Jews and imposes. Wait, let me finish. And imposes like military might and control on the Palestinians without any basic rights. So. Wait. When you show a video of a Palestinian woman getting stoned, you forget that the Israelis are not giving basic protections and rights to the Palestinians themselves.
Okay,
and
so
it is a two-tier system. It's a racist system.
So wait a minute. No, wait a minute. Everything that you just said couldn't be more of a lie. I'll call it a filthy, horrible, racist lie. Every word that you just said, because it's not true, and I'm going to tell you. The Arabs, the Palestinians are members of the Knesset. They participate in the Supreme Court. They are treated completely equally with no racism and no distinction whatsoever in Israel. There is absolutely nothing like that. And when you go to Israel and you go into like your local bar, you see Arabs and Jews and everybody's drinking together, and many of them have worked at the exact same companies, and they do the exact same things side by side. So there is absolutely none of that. To go a step further, even
Can I respond?
Wait, no. And to go a step further, when even in the communities in the West Bank and Gaza Strip specifically, where the people there have extreme racial hatred towards Jews, even hundreds of thousands of those, people come into Israel every single day to work. And they have jobs, and then they go back into Gaza at the end of the day. But it's incredible.
Let me know when I can say something about what you just said.
I caution you because to not lie. That's all I'm asking you to do.
No, I'm not going to lie. As a matter of fact,
don't lie, because you just lied and you're Googling away.
No, I'm not. I am not Googling anything. I'm telling you what I feel.
I'm going to interject at the instant that you say something that's a lie.
Okay. The United Nations 1 year ago today called the Israeli occupation, whatever you want to call it, the system that grants Israeli favor is actually meets the evidentiary standard for crimes called apartheid, a crime against humanity.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You're 100% right. But none of that is true. In terms of Israel is the only non-apartheid country in the Middle East. It's the only country that is not an apartheid country. Jordan.
According to you, but according to the UN, it meets this crime against humanity.
Okay, but it's not according to me, according to logic. The United Nations is a incredibly, who is head of the United Nations humanitarian division? Who's the head of that? Iran. Iran is the head of it. They hate the Jews. Do you understand? Iran hates the Jews. They're the ones who are dictating everything that you just said because it's their policy. Of course they're going to say that. The United Nations, have you ever been to the United Nations?
Of course. I lived right there.
Okay. I went to the United Nations International School for high school. I graduated in the General Assembly Hall of the United Nations. Most of my friends at the United Nations School were all ambassadors to various different countries all over the world. And this is how I grew up learning about all these things. So you got to realize the United Nations is so anti-Semitic. It's incredible. So never mind what the United Nations says, and you understand that the UN, UNRWA, okay, they already had members of UNRWA who were fighting and participated in the October 7th massacre. So whenever somebody is crazy enough to actually use the United Nations as a reference, it gives me pause and says, are you kidding me? Like, how do you even...
You can't just throw out the United Nations just because Iran is one of the...
The whole thing is absurd. I'm not going to listen to what the United Nations says and give it any weight or credibility whatsoever. Okay, that's not a reliable... You know what that's like? That's like saying, oh... the CDC says to take a vaccine, so I'm going to go and take it. It's insanity. It's complete insanity. You have to look at the information, understand it, interpolate it, and then come up with an understanding of reality in order to go forward in a just and equitable way. So, never mind what the United Nations says. Who gives a fuck? All right, let's get on to another topic.
All right, I do have to go.
No, wait, we got to talk about one more thing.
All right,
dude.
Well, after this, I got to go.
You keep coming on to these
It's already been 1 hour and 6 minutes.
I know, but it's an hour and 30-minute pod.
Oh, I didn't know that. I've never been told that.
Yes, it's an hour and 30 minutes. Let's just talk about something else that I was, because you wanted to talk about Millie, right?
Millie? Who's Millie? Millie Vanilli?
No, Fannie Willis.
Oh, Fannie, yeah. I love talking about Fannie.
So what do you think about Fannie Willis? What a creepy lady, huh?
I love the fact that you are, what I said in the text too, was burying the lead, right? So
There's no burying the lead.
Talking about Fannie instead of Trump trying to dig up 12,000 illegal votes to fraudulently sway the election in his favor is like talking about, I don't know, side effects from the vaccine rather than the billions of people that have been, positively affected for it. So I guess that's actually right.
So you actually believe that billions of people have been positively affected by the vaccine?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there's been another major study on the vaccine, and it was the largest study yet about the COVID vaccine, and it did find links.
Who sponsored that study?
No. It's actually, it comes in pretty.
Where's the money?
Talking about what you're talking about. There have been medical problems.
Oh, there's loads of problems. Listen. I'm going to tell you something. Can
I finish?
The United States. The United States is the only. Hold on a second. Wait. The United States and New Zealand are the only two countries on Earth that pharmaceutical companies are allowed to advertise on TV.
I agree.
Now,
that is a true statement.
Do you know why pharmaceutical companies advertise on television?
Because it makes the networks money?
Yes. Not because, well, that's not why, but it's the consequence. But you think that normally you see a commercial on TV, and it's because somebody's trying to sell you something. That's the point. They put a car. Look at this beautiful car. I want you to go buy it. Look at this beautiful makeup. Look how beautiful you're going to look. Go buy it. It's going to be great. But the pharmaceutical companies do not advertise because they think the consumer is going to go buy their drugs. That's got nothing to do with it. They advertise because they overwhelm the revenue quantity ratio to the networks, so then they can control them. So all that money that pharmaceutical companies are spending on ad space is so they have influence on those networks, and they influence that narrative. It's nothing to do. Nobody watches a thing and says, "Oh, I want to go get some Ozempic. Look at it. I just saw a cool ad." There's some of that, but that's not the purpose. That's just because the doctor is the one with all his perks and everything. Yeah. So now speaking of which, the NAACP has now come out and said black folks need to be able to get Ozempic for free. It's racist to not allow them because they represent a disproportionate amount of obesity in our population, and they should have access to Ozempic. So when doctors prescribe Ozempic, most of the time, obviously there are exceptions, they say, you don't even have to change your diet. You can keep doing what you're doing. Once you get on Ozempic, you got to stay on it. So the taxpayer has to basically foot this bill. And I'm just talking about Ozempic. I can go and talk about 30 other things, but Ozempic happens to be a nice one that's happening right now. Billions and billions of taxpayer dollars are being spent funneling to the pharmaceutical companies so they can go and be subsidized in order to give Ozempic. And that's the key. The key to success is to get the government to pay for your product. That's how it works.
Enrique,
and that is what's going on. Do you think
I say something? You are absolutely correct. Again, though, you miss the lead. You miss the story. You're right, but you're so focused
what's the story?
On this. So the story is that millions of lives were saved because of the COVID vaccines.
How do you know that?
Period.
How do you know that?
Then, hold on.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
It is researched.
I have found not one single piece of evidence that supports that statement. Not one single credible piece of evidence.
There have been studies that have shown that actually over 1 million lives were saved in Europe alone.
It's impossible to have a study that shows that a life was saved by a vaccine, number one. Show me one study for next week, bring it with you, actually send it to me so I can read the study, and then next Monday we will discuss that study. And that's how we'll open the pod.
Okay.
I have scoured for a study that you just described and have not found a single one. Not even one. So now let's go on to another thing, because we only have 17 minutes left. Listen. The Delaware court. This is a serious problem.
You fucking love this guy, man.
It's not about loving this guy. This is a big thing. The Delaware court negates Elon Musk's pay package. This is a guy. This is a guy that's completely the opposite of a Mary Barra who got paid $250 million to fail. This guy said, if I don't meet these impossible standards, remember at the time in 2017, Tesla was going out of business. It was barely hanging on. The stock was trading at $16 a share. It was running out of cash. And Elon Musk says, this is going to be a $600 billion.
This stock is going to be so grossly inflated.
Hold on. It was like a $20 billion valuation, and he said he's going to make it into a $600 billion valuation before he can qualify to get paid at all. So he's working around the clock, and if he doesn't do the impossible, he gets paid nothing. So then they went, and after he succeeded and did the impossible, at one point the valuation was well over $1 trillion. Well over $1 trillion. Right now, the valuation on Tesla is actually pretty modest. It's not inflated at all now. It's like a 45, 50 PE. It's very reasonable for a growth company.
Double average.
It's double the average, but that still doesn't have anything to do with it because it's not an average company. It's an extraordinary company.
It's got a shyster snake oil salesman as the head, constantly singing and dancing and screaming about things that are totally, ridiculous just to create
I understand. Well, he's a great marketer. There's no question about that. He's very talented at that. He's good at.
In my old neighborhood, they used to call it bullshit artist.
Well, he's never bullshitted about anything yet. So,
of course he has.
What is he bullshitted about? Name one thing.
What is he bullshitted about? In terms of Tesla?
Yeah.
What about the self-driving debacle?
It's going fantastic. I use it all the time. It's a miracle. The full self-driving is nothing. Wait.
The people listening, just Google it at home and come up with your own, do your own research. You'll see that he's been lying about the prospects of this technology for about as long as Tesla stock.
Okay, so hold on a second. Hang on. As a person who uses this product constantly, it's nothing short of a miracle. It's absolutely stunning how the full self-driving works. Like, it's awe-inspiring. So people at home, everyone who has a Tesla, you know what I'm talking about. Everyone who's at home who doesn't have a Tesla, and you don't know what's going on because you don't use it. So if you don't use the product, I don't know what to tell you. How can you actually have a strong opinion on it? Listen to the people who own the vehicles, who use the technology, and listen to what they said. So
7 years ago, Elon Musk said that autonomous driving was a solved problem.
Yeah, it is a solved problem. It's just going to take
what?
It's taking years. It's solved in terms of theoretically at the time.
It was a false promise. And it was a false promise with a very specific intent to defraud people into believing that Tesla was a technological giant that was rising like a phoenix.
So let me ask you a question. If that's the case, why does the full self-driving work so well?
It doesn't.
When was the last time you used it?
First of all,
when was the last time you used it?
Is full self-driving available in every Tesla?
In every Tesla that people pay for it.
Yeah?
Yeah. If you pay for it, you got it.
Well, in 2016, he announced that all of his company's vehicles will be shipped with the hardware necessary for full self-driving.
Yes,
in other words,
that's true.
You'll be able to sleep in your car, right? While your
that's not what that
means. While
means.
your car drives you to work. He promised this.
And wait a minute.
Even be able to drive across country with no one inside the vehicle.
And it will.
Guess what?
And it will. I think I'm going to tell you. I'll give you my prediction. By the year 2027, you will be able to get in your Tesla, drive across country, and sit in the back. Summer of 2027. And that is actually the exact and that is exactly the date that I said back in 2016. That was my prediction then, and my prediction has always stayed exactly the same throughout the entire time. Summer of 2027, that car...
Okay, I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Has Tesla ever shipped a fully driverless car?
Driverless? Not yet. No, it's coming. I just said summer of 2027.
But he made this announcement almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So a lot of people think that borders on the illegal.
Well, look, a lot of people are stupid. You have to understand that.
There you go.
He said in
26... making you rich.
No, just a minute. When he said it, I immediately said, okay, my prediction is summer of 2027. And everybody around me had a similar prediction. Some people thought it would be the summer of 2025.
You asked me, when has Elon Musk lied? I told you. That's it.
You still haven't told me.
I told you he announced fully driverless cars.
Yeah, and it's true.
And he never has delivered one of them.
Well, not yet.
Every year he says it's just a year away. It's just a year away.
That's because he thinks that it's going to happen. So what? It's how business works, dude. You have to refine. You have to innovate. And sometimes when you are trying to do something extraordinary, it might take a little longer than you thought. But the promise is still here. And if that car is not fully autonomous by, let's say, 2030, at that point I'll say, okay, he couldn't do it, but he'll throw in the towel. Just only a year and a half ago.
That's how business is done, right?
It's done correct, exactly like Elon Musk does it. He always tells the truth. Okay. Having a prediction is different than lying. And missing a deadline, saying it'll be next year, does not, and it's not next year, that's not a lie. That's an opinion that he had, and he believed that it could happen.
I see.
He's also been able to figure out how to make rockets land vertically and be reusable. That was unheard of, and he's been able to do that with SpaceX. So some things happen on time. I know I've made predictions in my own business, and I was way off on them. Nobody called me a liar. They just said, he thought it was going to be able to be done in 4 years, and it took 6. You see?
The problem with that, okay, there's a problem with that. When you promise, let's say, right?
Yeah.
When you proclaim something as a head of a company, right? Like, oh God, what was the name of that company?
Listen. Yeah. You don't have to go through this, Ben. Mary Barra from General Motors said, we're going to be leading the electronic vehicle revolution. And she's not done she hasn't even made 100 cars, not even 50. I don't call her a liar. I just say she was wrong. There's a difference between being wrong and being a liar. Mary Barra also got paid $250 million to fail. Let me say something else about this pay package.
I just want to say one last thing. You're right. There's a difference between being a liar, like Elon Musk, and...
When has he ever lied?
I just told you. And
no,
Elizabeth...
That's not...
He's like an Elizabeth Holmes, right?
Wait, no, now you're trying to...
Theranos woman, remember her?
You're better off trying to compare him to Mary Barra instead of Elizabeth Holmes. Because
she claimed that she had devised blood tests that could perform and do tell you if you've got diseases or not.
I know,
Guess
but
what?
I know, but you're just trying to pick somebody who's a bad person and try to associate.
No, you said that's how business is done, and you're right. That's how Theranos did business.
That's how Theranos did business, but Tesla has never done business like that, because you can't cite one single thing that Elon Musk lied about. Being wrong is different
I say
than lying.
To people at home,
I keep on
Google
trying to tell you that.
Driverless cars, Tesla, and you will see for yourself. I don't have to be the one to tell. I don't. Well, you got to know, right?
The people at home. Wait, the people at home should just go and get into their Tesla, drive it around, and the hardware has been available in all the Teslas. It has been,
but not the software.
The software is what you have to pay for. So what he does is they deliver the car with the hardware, and then they charge you, I think it's $12,000 for the FSD. But because it's in beta, it's still in, and now it's getting off of beta. But because it's been in beta, there's been a lot of different concessions, and they even let you try it out for only $200 a month, and so on and so forth.
What a bargain!
It is a bargain, and that's great. So this way you could see for yourself how valuable it is, and you don't have to have a commitment. It's just for a couple $100 a month. Remember, these people are buying these cars. They're paying, in some cases, they're paying $130,000 for a tricked out Model S, paying for $130,000, $125,000 for a top of the line Model X.
Maybe we should have those disabled minorities who can't get state IDs have their Teslas drive them to the DMV.
That's silly. They don't have Teslas, obviously. That's a Tesla.
What a shame. They can't afford that $200 a month, probably.
No, but those are not the people that are in this conversation about an expensive item. Yeah. They're not the people buying a $12,000 upgrade to a car.
That's true.
They're also not.
We both agree on that.
They're also not driving Ferraris and Porsches and Lamborghinis. Like, why even bring that up? It doesn't make sense. Now, all that being said, the Model 3 Tesla, after the discounts, the federal $7,500 refund, the car only costs, I think, you're in it for like $39,000. That makes it a fairly inexpensive vehicle, the Model 3. That's extremely affordable and accessible. The Model Y, I think you can get into that for about $43,000. That's fairly reasonable. But for the judge to say, you lost this, it is an upset. Hold on a second. You know what? I just realized something.
What?
I just realized something very interesting.
What?
How much does Elon Musk actually benefit from getting the $55 billion? Let's take a look at something. Let's take a look at something. He owns 15% of the money. The money
in the world, right?
Of the stock.
Okay. I wouldn't be surprised.
He owns 15% of the stock. So that payout of $55 billion, since it's the shareholders that are paying for it, 15% of that is coming from him. And then, if we really analyze this, 50% of the $55 billion is real income, and that goes to taxes. So if we do some quick math, and this is kind of just dawning on me.
Yeah.
So at a 56 billion, so it's like, 28 billion of it goes to the tax. And then he's actually getting a tax bill for 15% of the equity that he already owns that's contributing to this 55 billion. So I think when you really do the math, I don't even know that it's even good for him to get that payment.
Man, that's good for me, being a tax and spend liberal.
Well, it's not good for you because he didn't get the money.
No, but I mean, wouldn't that money conceivably go into the U.S. government?
Yeah, if he got the payment.
If he got the payment. So I'm going to reverse my opinion.
I got a feeling you should. You should be out there with your sign saying, "Give him his money," because
it's going to me, so I can give welfare mothers their checks.
I mean, whatever it is, it's it's interesting. Like, why would he even want that? I mean, let's say at the end of it all, he's, after you do all the math, he's got $20 billion left over. I mean, that would all go towards funding Neuralink to make blind people see and paralyzed people walk. And then
like a modern day Jesus.
Well, that's what he does. He spends all of his money on these things. He doesn't keep any money for himself. So all of that money...
They all go to his baby mamas?
They all go towards these businesses that help humanity anyway. Right. So half of it would be going to the tax, and the other half would be going towards helping people walk, helping people see, and all these things. So I don't know. I mean, I think everybody pretty much loses by that Delaware court decision. Everybody lost. Nobody won.
Nobody won.
The only people that could be perceived as having won are the stockholders, which, granted, many of them are the employees.
True.
But did they really win when the leader of the company has just been robbed of his paycheck? I mean, even if it's just symbolic that he would get paid the amount he's supposed to get paid, I don't think, I just don't, I'm a shareholder and I would want the guy to get paid because I think it's better for my shares. The employees would want him to get paid because it's better for their shares.
Well, let's leave this question for next
week
because I do have to go. It's been an hour and a half.
The government the government would want to get, I can't even identify the only person that I think, the only people that could possibly benefit from this are people just benefiting from the satisfaction that a person got perceived to be hurt. It's masochism. The joy that some
poor Muskie, the joy of seeing him lose.
But he didn't lose.
Bill.
He didn't really lose. You lost.
I did. All of America lost. The modern day Jesus is trying to make blind people see and paralyzed people walk, and you are preventing him from that by taking a few billion. How dare you?
No, he's not. But you got to realize that the Delaware court decision did nothing for you, nothing for welfare mothers, nothing for people. How can it?
Oh no!
What are you talking about? So it's just about hate, burning the guy who's doing good. It's just about, that's what the hyper liberals want, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it's just a sickness.
It's a sickness. It's a left-wing disease that's encroaching this country and forcing you to flee. All right, Enrique, we'll talk about it more.
Write it down next week.
Yeah, next week. It's been great talking to you.
Try to find one thing that Elon Musk has lied about, because you didn't find it.
Self-driving cars. I'm telling the people at home, they'll Google it.
It hasn't not happened yet. Life is still happening.
It hasn't not happened yet.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It takes years.
Not happened yet.
Yeah. So for the people at home.
I'm still trying to figure that one out.
For the people at home.
Yeah.
Summer of 2027. That's when people will have it, and his promise will have come true. And it's already kind of come true, because I already use the product all the time and it's incredible.
Is it?
It's absolutely astonishing. It's like,
it's been great, dude.
It's
great
like amazing.
Talking to you. I'll see you next week, same time, same bat channel.
All right, I'll send you the link. I think this was a good pod, right?
It's a good one.
I hope the audience learned a lot. I think it was interesting. And leave comments. This is a really nice, exciting one today. All right, see ya. Have a wonderful one.